Chapter 4. It was late when JV stepped onto the back porch for a second time that night. She tried to sleep but instead had lain restless. Nick had given her permission to roam the property and run whenever she wanted, so she didn't hesitate before starting to strip. She shivered when the cold night air hit her skin. Once the last of her clothes were off, she ran to the edge of the porch and dove. Shifting in midair, she landed on all fours. She shook her entire body, trying to rid her skin of the tingle caused by shifting, then took off into the woods at a run. Her cat eyes picked up far more light than her human ones would have, and she saw everything around her clearly. She ran through the thick woods with ease, dodging low-hanging branches, ducking under a bent trunk, leaping over a downed tree. She ran hard, leaving what haunted her somewhere in the night. 2 days in the truck had left her tense. She'd been sure that Steve wouldn't be happy to see her, and more than once she'd considered turning around and going back. Now she was glad she'd had nothing to return to, it had made her stick it out. Seeing him again had been worth it. JV continued to run, letting the uncertainty and nerves fall away. She loved spending time in this form, but living in Austin, she hadn't had the freedom to it as much as she'd craved. When she was a cougar, she felt free, fearless. In the city, there was always too much risk of someone seeing and shooting at her. She ran until her muscles ached and her sides heaved with her every breath, but she kept going. She didn't know how far she'd gone or how long she'd been moving when she slowed to a walk. She had no idea where she was. She knew she could follow her own trail back to the cabin if she wanted, but that didn't feel right, not tonight. She gazed up at the trees around her. Did she dare? Why not? With ease, she leapt into one of the trees. Settling into the Y of a branch about 10 feet off the ground, she relaxed and started to doze. The snap of a twig woke her. JV was instantly alert. It was still dark, but someone or something was close. She moved slowly, so whatever it was wouldn't see her, as she looked for whatever had made the noise. On the ground below the tree she was perched in was another cat, a cougar even larger than she was. The wind was blowing the wrong direction for her to be able to pick up the newcomer's scent, but she knew he had to be a kitsune. She would have scented a natural cougar if she had wandered into their territory, and a natural wouldn't brave her scent if she wasn't invading. Who are you? She thought at him, using the telepathic talent that she'd developed after her first shift to cougar. She watched him circle the base of the tree she still hid in. Should I be hurt that you don't recognize me? Steve's voice whispered through her mind. How would I know it's you? She demanded. I've never seen your cat before, and with the wind, your scent hasn't risen this far. She didn't know how he managed it in this form, but he shrugged. What are you doing up there? He looked up at her. I was sleeping. Something wrong with your bed? She bristled. I was too keyed up and I thought a run might help. She couldn't tell him she slept better in this form. Living in the city, she was always afraid someone would come in and find her, so she didn't get to do it often. I realized you were gone when I found your clothes on the porch. Why are you up there? By the time I got out here, I felt better and I didn't want to go back. I've never been able to run as much as I wanted to spend the night out, if I wanted. I thought, why not to now? He snorted. Are you ready to head back? Sure, why not? She hopped out of the tree and started back along the trail that now held both their scents. Is there a reason you're going the long way? Only that I don't know where we are. I'm going back the way I came. Steve somehow managed to roll his eyes. Follow me. He turned and started in the opposite direction, continuing in the direction JV has been going, before she'd stopped to sleep. A few minutes later, as light started to appear in the sky, JV saw the clearing where the houses sat. I'm going to have to learn the area better. Especially if you plan to continue running at night, Steve sent, his mental voice dry. Thanks for showing me how to get back. She leaned over to rub her head against his neck, but Steve sidestepped, avoiding her touch. That's my job. He left her beside the porch to go in the house on her own, and he turned and headed for his cabin. She made her way up the steps and stopped beside the chair where she'd left her clothes. She held still, concentrated on her human body and willed herself into it. Her skin tingled as it stretched and absorbed her fur. She felt her bones move and pop as she shifted. JV shivered and hurried to pull on her clothes. The temperature had dropped since she'd undressed, hours earlier. Still shaking, she fumbled with the doorknob for a moment, then slipped inside. Leaning against the closed door, she took a deep breath and sighed. It was chilly inside but much warmer than outside. She headed for her bedroom, hoping to burrow between the covers for a little while and warm up. You're out early, Nick said from behind her as she made her way through the dark kitchen. JV jumped. She spun around, eyes wide with panic, to find him sitting at the table they'd eaten at the night before. You always sit in the dark? Nick smiled. Actually yes, every day. I didn't expect anyone up this early. There's coffee if you're interested. That sounds good. It'll help warm me up. She'd smelled the coffee, but the same scent had been in the kitchen the night before. The pot had been hot then too. It's a little chilly out there. He watched her move around the kitchen. He hadn't missed the scent of her fear, or how she'd tried to hide how afraid she'd been. Cups? Nick pointed to the cabinet over the coffee pot. JV poured herself a cup. You really get up this early every day? Mostly. Ranching means early mornings more often than not. They sat in comfortable silence until Nick finished his coffee and headed out to get started on the day's work. JV emptied her cup and headed to the other end of the house to shower and change.